Nobody above blocking. You stress me, I block you. You give me attitude, I block you. You do like Colonial Bruku, I block you. Nobody above blocking. Anybody can be blocked at any fucking blocking time. So if you stress my life, I block you. That is the energy I'm moving with in 2021. And that was from our dear Nigerian brother. That was probably the best upload I've seen on Instagram in the whole of 2020. And honestly, that is my attitude. I'm not taking bullshits. I'm past that age of arguing with anybody. Any bullshit, I block you. You want to move like Colonial Bruku, I block you. That is it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of 2020 of the Toya Talks Podcast. This is the wrap-up show, and I've been so excited to be able to present this to you guys. We're going to wrap up the entire year, and I'm going to do it in the best way that I can, Toya Washington style. A few of you have been complaining that the last two episodes of the Toya Talks Podcast wasn't long enough for you guys. And, sit back, make sure you have coffee or whatever it is that you take to relax yourself. This is going to be a long episode because obviously we're wrapping up the entire 12 months. This has been a crazy 2020. If anybody would have told you at the start of the year that not only will we entering a global pandemic, that Boris Johnson will be moving mad, Dominic Cummings and going will be coming and going, Priti Patel will just be acting just raz. The amount of things that we have seen in this, our blogs and everything, hey God, I just don't know. All I know is, Pastor Toby, if I was to see him on road, I'm crossing the road, he is bad vibes, bad energy. Anybody that even goes near that guy, God forbid bad thing. So yeah, guys, we're here doing the wrap-up episodes, and I'm so blessed. I don't even know where to start. Where should we start? Well, for those of you who don't know, the Toya Talks podcast started on the 1st of January 2020. And one of the things that I promised myself is I would be consistent. Come rain or shine, there would always be a new episode of the Toya Talks podcast every Tuesday. There was one day where I was so ill and I couldn't upload on Tuesday, I uploaded on Wednesday. And for me, it was always about consistency and making sure that every week you guys had a new episode. And I'm so proud to be able to sit here and say that I accomplished that. That was one of my goals on my vision board. I just didn't want to fall off. And, I always said that I would always put out good, authentic content. And I would like to say that I believe that that's what I have been doing, especially with all the feedback I've received from people who have followed the Toya Talks platform for when it started back in 2017, and all the new followers and listeners that we have acquired along this journey. I'm so blessed to be in a position where I can sit here and say I have a successful podcast. I measure success against you guys. I measure it against how you guys respond. I measure it against the success stories from the advice that I've given on the episodes that you guys have put into practice and manifested a lot of your career journey and a lot of your decision making in relation to your career. I mentioned before, but since we're talking about successes, Spotify ranked the Toya Talks podcast number 46 in the business section in podcasting for 2020. And honestly, I was just thrown, and you guys were sharing with me the ratings and rankings of the Toya Talks podcast as you listen to other podcasts, and I was always top 5. For some of you, top 3, and for some of you, top 2. And honestly, I can't begin to express to you how blessed that makes me feel. That you guys engage with the podcast to the extent that you guys have incorporated it into your daily lives. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, because there are days when I'm ill or if I'm tired, but when I remember the positive affirmations and the positivity that radiates from some of you guys just based on the podcast, honestly, that's motivation enough. To be able to sit here and say to you that I'm walking in my purpose is a blessing, because for a long time I walked in a wilderness. For a long time I was lost. For a long time I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. I was going through so much, but I didn't know that God was preparing me to be able to deliver this, a platform where I can share my experiences, share with you where I went wrong, share with you my success stories so that you guys can then go ahead and navigate the world successfully and light up the path of your own success, because success is attainable for each and every one of us if we choose to commit to the process and the journey of walking in our purpose. I want to also thank my support network and my support system, because it really does take a village. To be a creative in an industry which doesn't necessarily recognize my successes is quite hard, because I've had to reevaluate how I view success. Is success the fact that I'm trending on certain blogs and on Twitter? Is success being recognized from people in the industry? Is success being given awards? No, that's not what success means to me. And I didn't realize that until literally the end of this year. In terms of the Toya Talks platform, the success is realized in the lives that the podcast and the Toya Talks platform changes. It's the success stories that you guys tell me. It's you guys negotiating higher salaries than you thought possible. It's you guys navigating the world of work and walking through some difficult situations and attaining success through successful outcomes. It's you guys using my masterclasses on the toyatalks.com website and being able to cultivate and create amazing CVs, negotiating, smashing your interviews. That is my success. That is what success looks like. It is the result of what the essence of the podcast is. And I just want to thank you guys for reminding me of that, because every time you share your success stories with me, you literally keep lighting the path of the greatness of what the Toya Talks platform is. And that's very, very deep. I wasn't sure how I was going to start this, but let me just put the lay of the land out there. So I posted a couple of times that I was going to do the end of year wrap up, and I asked many of you if you wanted any questions answered, and I said it could be anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be work related, although I prefer it to be, but then I would read it out on the wrap up show. So I have quite a lot of questions. You guys said you wanted longer Toya Talks podcast. You have it today. But before we get into all of that, because we also have some dilemmas as well, I wanted to talk about something that happened yesterday. So I joined Clubhouse, CH. Yeah, I joined it. And for the longest, well, what felt like the longest time, I was just listening. I wasn't participating. And one would think that because I have a podcast, because I'm quite active on social media, I'll be quite comfortable with Clubhouse, but I wasn't. And I don't know what it is. I think it's just, a new form of social media. It's unknown, it's weird. And for me, I like to do my due diligence and figure out the lay of the land before you now just jump in and dive in, deep diver. So yesterday, one of my really good friends, Bimpe, she created a Clubhouse group. So you can create like groups and meeting rooms if you like. And she said it was named What Have We Learned in 2020? And there was only a few of us in the group, but I'm telling you right now, it was such good vibes. Oh my God, we were on there until I think 12:30. It was absolutely fantastic. There were different age ranges there. We were all black women and we were laughing and joking, sharing our experiences. And each and every woman in that group brought something so beautiful to that Clubhouse meeting. It was amazing. There was a young lady in the group, and I don't know who she is. And I didn't think she knew who I was, but she did. And she didn't actually reveal that until later on. So during the Clubhouse, we were talking about micromanagers. And you guys know I've got an episode on micromanagers. And, I share my view on micromanagement and things like that. But it kind of been propelled to the forefront now that we're remote working, effectively locked down in a pandemic. So, we were talking about it. So this young lady said to me, said to us, she's like, you guys are talking about micromanagers, but, I'm a manager on the other side. And she said, I've joined this company newly and I'm managing somebody who has line reports. And actually, since I've started, I've just noticed that, he logs on late, logs off early. He's meant to give me end of day reports on what's been happening and, updating me. He doesn't even engage with me. I've been sending him emails. I've tried to speak to him so that at least we can speak from the same hymn sheet, but I'm not getting anywhere. So as she's talking, I'm just listening. Then she said, I just had enough. And I emailed him and I said, listen, what are your hours? Because I don't know when you're working, when you're not working. And, you should be telling me because, you report to me. I should know where you are. This guy waited until later on that day, like the night, to email her and tell her that she should go and speak to human resources if she wants to find out what his hours are or his days are. So she shared this in Clubhouse. I said, Auntie, Madam, Sister, sorry. And I basically said to her, you know the way to deal with somebody like this? I said, he's told you what you should go and do. But what he's not going to bank on is what you're going to do when you get there. I told her that, because she said to me, he's on a fixed term contract and he's on probation. So my man is acting as though he can't get sacked. My man's behaving as though probation doesn't apply to him. He's acting like we're not in a pandemic where jobs are not as readily available as it was pre-pandemic. I said to her, you need to go to HR and you need to find out the policies and rules on performance management. I said, it's very easy to get rid of him, i.e. he hasn't passed his probation. I said, but it's not about him. It's about you as a manager. It's about how you look to the people that also report into him. It's about using him as an example of what management really is and how you are quite willing to use the rules to manage him out if somebody gets too big for their boots. We're talking about a black woman as a manager. And a question was asked to her, is the guy, is he white? Where's he from? She said, no, he's Chinese. Now, my experience of working with people who are Chinese or from Chinese backgrounds is that culturally, and this is just my experience, culturally, some of them do have issues with taking instructions from women. And remember, she's not just a woman, she's a black woman. So already we have the gender issue that some men have. And then we have black women as we have issues with having to it's almost like they try to make us prove why we should be their manager. Bullshit. I said to her, when you go to HR, you performance manage him. I said, what you do is, you don't say anything to his email. The email that he sent you today, you just ignore. Then you give him New Year presents. You send him an email. And she said that all her correspondence with him, she's kept all of it. I said, good. What you do then is, you send him an email and copy HR and say to him that due to his disengagement of management and his flagrant disregard for your for you being able to manage him and certain requests that you've put forward to him that he's been unable to do, you have made the decision that given that he is on probation, because sometimes you have to remind them because they're crazy, that you are putting him on performance management. And then you have to specify how long that performance management will last. And I would suggest coinciding it with his probation period. And that if he does not pass, and you have to stipulate what he will need to do to pass. If he does not pass, you'll be terminating his contract at the end of his probation. Yes, that's how you do it. Because this young lady was telling me that she spoke to her boss about it, and her boss said, listen, you can get rid of him if you want. If it's too much, those weren't her words, but I'm just paraphrasing here. So I said to her, you have to also look at it as, you need to show your manager that rather than just getting rid of somebody, you'll try and work with them until they place you in a position whereby you have to get rid of them. And it shows a level of management that is not gun-ho at getting rid of people, but working within the system, working within the governance rules to be able then to hopefully change the behavior around. And then in doing that as well, you are building on your management skills, because management skills isn't about getting on with people necessarily. It's not even about people listening to you. It's about the way you manage. How do you manage? Are you a fair manager? Fairness comes from action and what you do. And in managing him, performance managing him, you're also sending a message to the rest of the staff there that are reporting into him that you do not take bullshit and you don't care what level anybody is at. They can be performance managed. If your performance is subpar or under the line of what is acceptable, you'll performance manage them. And once they don't pass, they'll be gone. Because people think it's easy to recruit. It's not. It's not easy. It's despite the fact that there is a lot of people looking for work. It's not easy to recruit because you are now having to whittle down larger numbers, shortlist larger numbers. That's time, that's money, that's energy. So it's better that you try and work with what you have. And if you can't work with what you have, at least when you're then going to interview somebody, you know the personality and the skill sets that you need for that particular role. This young lady, she's new, well, relatively new. So she has to, make her mark. But at the same time, she's also learning key skills about managing difficult situations. This young black lady on Clubhouse was lovely, and she said, you know what, Toya, I never really looked at it like that. And she goes, I've kept my burn folders. And in my head I was like, She said, yeah, I follow the Toya Talks platform. Oh my God, if you saw the look on my face, because when I was advising her, I don't move like people know who I am, right? I work in my truth. I work and walk in my truth. And it was so nice that, she didn't say, she didn't start off by saying, oh, Toya, she almost put it to the group. And it was almost like, I don't think this was her intention, but I definitely felt like it could have been her trying to see, oh, let me see this Toya, like, is she really who she says she is? And the young lady was lovely, and all of us contributed to kind of giving her advice. And what I loved is that even within that platform, a safe space was created for this young black lady to share. And I was so proud, when she said she's a manager and the industry she works in, it was beautiful to see. And that to me is the essence of what Toya Talks is. And I feel so blessed to be experienced enough to be able to give advice to black women about the world of work. I don't know everything, but believe me, I've been through enough to be able to sit in this chair and advise you guys. I know what success is, because I believe I am a successful black woman. And I know I'm successful because I know what I measure as success. But there is still more to attain. I've been in management situations before where, unfortunately, you do have to get rid of somebody, but it's the way you do it, especially going in new into an organization, building those relationships and building that rapport with people. One thing people always say about me, Toya is firm but fair. And I like that, because for me, it's not about, I'm not interested in all of that. All that is a byproduct, and all that comes with building relationships. But fairness means that I am not biased, and it means that I don't use a sledgehammer to slam a rock. That's not what I'm about. I'm about people understanding that this is the perimeters and the boundaries that I work in. And if you disrespect those perimeters and boundaries, I will definitely stand up for myself. I will definitely make sure that I use you as an example to teach the rest. So yeah, that was Clubhouse yesterday, and it was absolutely fantastic. And any of the ladies that are listening to this episode, thank you for making that Clubhouse room interesting, funny, and more importantly, a safe space for us to all share. If any of you are interested in following me on Clubhouse, my handle is Toya Washington, and that's Toya Washington, all one word. So moving on. When I was thinking about everything that's happened this year, I didn't even know where to start. So I'm going to touch on a couple of things. One being the plague of Karens. It was white women using their white fragility to move mad, masquerading their fragility as blatant racism against black people. We saw the resurgence of people recording the Karen's madnesses. And, I think a lot of people were shocked, because it was almost like for the first time, even the Karens couldn't deny their racism. And, a lot of things trended. We saw a lot of things. And I think there's a lot of things that happened that weren't captured on camera. And it made everybody just stop and think. Even Karens are stopping and thinking now, especially when you take out the camera and call them Karens. I mean, even before the whole Karen thing happened, those people who have been following me, especially on Instagram and Snapchat actually, I remember telling you guys early this year about a lady I was working with, and her name happened coincidentally to be Karen. And she had every single Karen trait you can imagine, always trying to provoke me in the office, coming out with some mad shit. But every day she would come and she was still stinking of them Benson and Hedges cigarettes that she was smoking 5 to 10 times a day, with her bullshit, trying to make me uncomfortable, all the rest of it. And to be honest with you, I think even from a personal level, my experiences of Karens have been that their white fragility is so weaponized that you have to be so strategic about how you navigate Karens in the office. And now I just call them Karens. I say, you're behaving like a Karen, it's making me uncomfortable. And being able to feel comfortable enough to say that, because we now know what that is laced with and what it signifies. I want to also mentioned how dangerous the Karens have been in trying to weaponize their tears as a direct threat to our existence as black people. And if anything has come out of 2020 in relation to Karens, is that we're no longer putting up with it anymore. We're calling it out. We'll put it on social media. We'll make sure it trends. And we're using our voice in the most positive way possible to highlight how threatening and damaging being a Karen is to black people in general and to our lives and our livelihood. This year, 2020 will always remain the year that was most triggering, I believe, to the black community. We have been triggered and seen how white people have attempted to normalize the brutality towards black people and often the murder of black civilians across the globe. The death of George Floyd rocked the entire world and brought again to the forefront that Black Lives Matter. Because for so long, our black lives have not mattered. We've been treated as though our black lives don't matter. And I think seeing again the video recording of the death of George Floyd, even talking about it now, it's like hairs all over my body. It was the sad depiction that nothing's really changed. Nothing's really changed other than the fact that we are recording these things now. The shock is still there. The brutality is still there. And it really made me think about some of our black brothers and sisters in America who are really going through it. And when I say really going through it, I say it from the perspective of the fact that discrimination, racism is very ingrained and entrenched in American history. And the access to guns, the power that the police wield in America is dangerous. And the murder of George Floyd will always be probably, for me, it was the most disturbing thing I saw in 2020. And as black people, we know our history. We know what we have been through. We know our ancestors and what they went through. But to think that after so many years of what we believe is or should have been change, nothing's really changed. And that was a lot. Also witnessing how this country behaved and reacted to the resurgence of Black Lives Matter. And I always thought about when it's no longer a hashtag and no longer trending, that's when we're really going to see companies who really support the Black Lives Matter movement and actually who really understand the struggles that the black community have had to go through over the years and still are going through. I think a lot of companies have been very performative. I think loads of businesses have been performative. I think there's been a complete highlight in how, as black people, we spend our money and who we spend it with, and understanding the power of the black pound has literally, I think, been brought to the forefront and making us more responsible for the decisions that we make in relation to the power that we have as black people, because we have power. We just don't necessarily always realize it or use it in the way it's supposed to be used. And I think this year has taught us the lesson in understanding and realizing our strength as a collective community and our power, and equally how white people will forever think that because we are quote unquote living side by side with them, that they have proximity to what belongs to us. Many times on Instagram, and even most recently, I spoke about how I'm sick and tired of watching white people think that they can use their whiteness to continue to oppress, take, pillage, and steal from black people. And I'm no longer having it. I've sounded the alarm several times. And if anyone does that to me directly, i.e. any person, any non-black person who tries to use my platform or tries to plagiarize my platform, I'm calling it out, because I'm tired of the bullshit. I'm tired of the blood, sweat and tears that we as black people have to go through and make those sacrifices so white people think they can come and take and pass it off as their own. I think a clear example of that is Slumflower. Slumflower is a black queen. Her name is Chidera, and she actually coined the hashtag Saggy Boobs Matter. She's also the author of What a Time to Be Alone and How to Get Over a Boy. And she was going through a lot of things with her publishing company. And basically, they had another lady on their books, and they were basically allowing this white lady to effectively plagiarize, take, copy, whatever you want to term you want to use, Chidara's, platform and books. And they were in the same publishing house. And I really want to get her on the show. If I could get her on a podcast, that would be amazing. So you guys need to hit her up. Her Twitter handle is the Slumflower, and I'm going to reach out to her as well, because I want to have her on the Toya Talks podcast, because I really want to understand kind of what happened with her. But also I think it's really important to understand some of the tactics that the Karens and some of these white women or owners of publishing houses and companies who pretend to push the black agenda insofar as bringing awareness to a lot of the things and issues that black people go through. But in doing that, they have their own agenda. And whilst as black people we're creating and we're developing and we're doing certain things, it's really important that we understand how ownership comes about and the tactics that some white people are using in pursuit of their own agenda of owning what doesn't belong to them. So I would love to get her on the podcast. And I've never actually spoken about who I'd like to get on a podcast, but she's somebody I would, especially because I feel like she had such success so quickly, and I would love to understand kind of why she signed to that publishing house, kind of what really happened over the last few months, and kind of what she has learned from her experiences. So if you guys could hit her up, just, I don't know, send her a message under a picture or something and just say, Toya Talks Podcast would love to interview you. I'd love to interview her and have her on the podcast. And also as well, I think it's really important that you guys hear from other black people, and that's why I did the In Conversations, because I wanted, number one, for you guys to see the village I have around me and different viewpoints. But I think it's also important that we share and create safe spaces as black people to share, because the only way we're going to learn is the knowledge that we share with each other, and the only way we're going to feel comfortable to share that knowledge is in safe spaces that we black people create for each other. This year also highlighted to me how important it is to be able to diversify your skill sets. Anyone who has followed the Toya Talks podcast knows I talk about being a subject matter expert, and it couldn't be even more relevant than it is now. How important it is to make sure that you're acquiring skills, building on your skill sets, but also finding what you're good at, walking in your purpose and being the subject matter expert in any career path that you choose. Those people that studied, modern history, that all the museums are closed. All the museums are closed, and you're finding yourself in difficult situations because you can't get a job because of certain courses that we're taking on a whim. Certain career choices you're taking on a whim, rather than looking at your career as a project. You need to start looking at your career as a project. And I'm serious, because I get this question all the time. Oh, Toya, how did you know that this is the career path you wanted to go to? How have you managed to sustain it? But it also, before I start going into to answer that, it's also a mindset. If you look at your career like a project, it's a lifelong project that you're committing to, you will start making lifelong decisions. You will start making strategic decisions. You will start approaching your career in a strategic way. You don't have to be working in the corporate world. I no longer work in the corporate world. You don't have to be the top lawyer or the top pharmacist. Any career path you choose, you need to deal with it like it's a project. You need to be planning. You need to think ahead. There's some people, they probably look at me and they think, well, Toya, you've got all these, qualifications. You've worked in all these great places. What next? There's always something next to do. I'm already planning what I'm going to be doing, because I know the next stage for me is to have children. And whether we like it or not, as women, we make the sacrifice. The child grows in you. Yeah? If you choose to have a child, the child grows in you, unless you're choosing to maybe use a surrogate or things like that. But for me, my child is growing in me. So that means I will have to take maternity. I don't have a choice. So I'm thinking about, okay, how can I mitigate the time that I'll be off on maternity leave raising my child? Because I know at some point I'm coming back to my career and I want to maintain the level in which I left at. So I'm thinking about additional education. Yeah, I'm a master's holder.
I've done my LLB, I've gone to law school, I'm a master's holder, I've done my level 4 diploma in SIPS. I'm thinking about the next thing. Because the way the world is moving is you have to understand that certain industries have not survived this pandemic. Certain industries have shown themselves not to be foolproof. Yeah? And everything that we're going through in this pandemic with Boris Johnson and the government is clear classism. Clear classism. And I'm going to go onto that topic a bit later on. But if anything that has been highlighted is the powers that the government have to switch off industries is scary. The dependence on the state for money is uncomfortable because you never know when they're going to switch that off. And I personally can't live at the mercy of that. Anybody at any time in your career can change career path. There is not a designated time. You can't. People have these self-limiting thoughts about it being too late. It's never too late. This is somebody who's talking to you that after kind of doing the academics, I didn't do it one after the other. I had breaks in between. I then decided I wanted to be an African entertainment TV presenter. I went ahead and did it. I literally left everything. I went and did it. I decided I wanted to go on a reality show. I went on Big Brother. Do you understand? I definitely look back and feel like I've had a very, very full life. Definitely. There's nothing I would actually change because it's brought me to where I am now. I am so in love with my career because my career saved my life. I keep telling people this. It saved my life. It did. I walked away from the African entertainment industry and I literally was like, when I lost my dad, I made an attempt on my life. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't. When I got to a point where I was willing to fight for my life, I needed stability, I needed something constant, and I was able to fall back on my education and my experience and fell into contract management. I was always kind of doing it, but when I say fell into it, I mean falling into it properly and really embodying the essence of contract management. I love everything to do with contracts. If you want to get me excited, give me a contract to mark up, draft, negotiate. I love it. And I'm not talking about little contracts, multi-million pound contracts in the excess of 500 million pounds. Like I've negotiated contracts that are so recognized and known. Like honestly, I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for the grace of God and the commitment to seeing my career as a project. And if I see it as a project, I'm always strategizing how to get the best out of my career. I'm always strategizing my next move. Being a contractor has been amazing. It's afforded me the flexibility, but it's also been difficult as well, especially with the IR35 and it going through Parliament. It's made things very, very difficult. Then I've had to think of, okay, where's the compromise? If I can't get a contract, would I do an FTC? 100%. I've done FTCs before. I've got no problem. But then it's about making sure I'm at that salary bracket that makes sense. You know, at the end of the year, everybody's like, oh, you know, we're going to plan, New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolutions are bullshit. Let me help you to understand. New Year's resolutions are made by people who need to make them feel that they're approaching the year in the right way. But remember, I have a podcast episode, Career Manifestation, Vision Boards and Energies, and that is in season 2, this season of the Toya Talks podcast, and I talk about manifestation and vision boards because you can only manifest things you can see. You have to be able to see them, and vision boards are amazing because they're visual tools to hold you accountable in attaining certain goals. So whilst I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you shouldn't do New Year's resolution. That's not what I'm saying. But how many of you actually stick to your New Year's resolution? How many of you remember your New Year's resolution? How many of you make excuses for not attaining your New Year's resolution? And how many forget? New Year's resolutions are only memorable in January. When life really hits you in the teeth after January, you forget it. Whereas I think when you have vision boards and you really are proactively committing to manifesting certain things you want to achieve, it's amazing how being able to see it every day holds you accountable. And, I spoke about on that podcast episode kind of how I, do my vision boards and things like that. So obviously we're at the end of the year. The 1st of January 2021, I'll be doing my vision board. And my vision boards, I have words and things like that. And I have certain cards on there for different things. And on those cards will be things for the year that I need to work to achieve. And Sometimes you don't achieve them, and that's fine, but it's about being realistic. Okay, so what is the reason as to why I haven't attained this? Can I bring it into the following year with the view that this needs to get done? Is it a non-negotiable? And what steps do I need to adopt that I didn't the previous year to be able to attain this? How intrinsic is this to certain goals and certain things I'm trying to achieve in my life? That's what I do. Being able to manifest is being able to trust yourself, to walk in your purpose enough, to believe in yourself enough, to make things happen in your life. And if they don't happen, it doesn't mean that you can't. It just means that you need to maybe go back into the drawing board and reassess how you are actually approaching things. I don't want us to kind of get caught up on the nostalgia of a New Year's resolution. And it's easy to do that when we've been in a pandemic and we've been locked down. You know, I've been seeing a lot of things on social media about people saying, oh, you know, it's been a hard year, everybody's going to start listing their achievements. But one of the achievements that we all have attained is being able to get to the end of the year. And that is true. But don't then slam other people who have literally manifested certain things, have put things on their vision boards and achieved them. We need to also celebrate that too. But it doesn't make you lesser because you haven't. Do you understand? Vision boards, you know, people do vision boards in different ways. I've heard that people use Pinterest and things like that. I don't use that because I'm dyslexic, and the way I learn is through visual recognition of certain things. So I have a massive vision board that I bought from one store in King's Cross in London, and I have certain pictures on there, and these pictures are more to bring to life certain things. And then I have coloured cards, and on these cards I have goals. So it will say like 2021 goals for whatever topic, and then I will put 4 or 5 things under there. And as the year progresses every quarter, I will then go back to the vision board to see what I have achieved and to realign certain things. And for me, that's what gives me focus. I have a card for my career. You know, what does maternity look like for me? What does savings look like for me? What does a financially comfortable position look like for me? And what do I need to do to achieve that? You're allowed to think like that. We don't talk about money a lot. We're going to talk about money a lot more in 2021. And money is allowed to be a motivator, but it can't be the sole motivator. When thinking about the pandemic and what it has highlighted, something that is very, very clear to me is that the reasons why certain industries have not survived this pandemic is certain industries failed to move with the times. We are in a digital age, whether you want to accept it or not. People working remotely is not a foreign thing. People should have been doing that from before. But organisations that failed and disregarded the importance of remote working are forced into that situation now. And what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing, is that I'm saving a heck of a lot of money because I'm not using transport. I have a car that I barely use, but that would be my only kind of like transport, like petrol and stuff. Petrol quite cheap at the moment because of the current climate of things. I'm more productive working remotely. I hold myself accountable, and some people can't cope with working remotely because they need that social interaction. I'm not really like that. You know, I used to say I don't like people, but what I don't like is I don't like the stressful intensity of office politics in the office. So what I'm finding is that because that has been removed, I'm working at my optimal level. And also, I'm at a stage in my career where I can call myself a remote worker and people will hire me on that basis. But that's also because I've been able to manage my career as a project, attain certain things, worked in certain places, gotten a load of experience whereby I have a lot more leverage in negotiation. So when I'm negotiating a contract, I will negotiate remote working into that contract. And to be fair, with the way things are going now, any contract that I take on is remote by default, number one, and probably for the duration of that contract. I think organisations are also realising how much they're saving on estate. So where organisations have spent a lot of money on buildings, leases, well, you're paying all that money, and really and truly, you don't need that much space. And from a financial perspective, I think it's all giving us a lot of food for thought about our financial capability in realizing certain goals. And I don't think we should be afraid to broach those subjects. Things like remote work and things like money. You guys know I've got the negotiation masterclass on the toyatalks.com website. I share with you my industry secrets about negotiating. I've never not negotiated a contract, and I always get what I want, and I always reach a compromise that is satisfactory to both myself and the other party. And I share those gems in the negotiation masterclass. And I think even more so now we're in a pandemic, you have the upper hand to negotiate irrespective of how many people are applying for this one job. Don't ever think that because you're negotiating, they're going to take back the job. It doesn't really work like that. It doesn't. And if it does work like that for some organisations, you shouldn't want to work there anyway, because that's just fucking bad vibes. Talking about remote working, I have suffered from some very, very chronic burnout. And I think it's because, again, you're realigning the boundaries from the workspace into the home workspace that is remote working. And I've just found myself in a situation whereby, because I'm working at my optimal level, it means that I'm working past 5. And the type of project I am on, it's very, very high intensity. It's fast paced and fast moving. And it really has pushed me to my brink, basically. This is the hardest contract I have ever worked on in my entire career. And it's just because of the industry and where it is. And I realise, and I've known anyway, that I'm a commercial contract manager. I can work anywhere. It is literally about whether the environment is conducive for where I'm working. And my burnout was so bad. I had the shakes. My ears were going red. I'd wake up with a tight chest, can't breathe properly. I was highly, highly stressed. And I got to a point where I realised that, you know what? This ain't for me, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to kill myself for a company that doesn't belong to my father. And realising that the reason why there has been such proximity for a lot of us to burnout is because we're working in an environment, i.e. the pandemic, that is forcing us into situations where we're compromising our own mental health, especially with work, where a lot of us are feeling and, very grateful to have jobs, because a lot of people have, been out of work because of the pandemic, and therefore you almost feel indebted to your job. And I think that we need to work on having healthier relationships with our careers. Yeah, we need to work on having healthier relationships with our careers, and that's a podcast episode right there. And in order to have healthy relationship with your career, you need to respect your career enough to understand that in order for you to work at your optimal level, in order for you to work at a level that is great and being able to deliver, is you have to get your mental health right. You have to be okay. And I'm going to be the first person to put my hand up and say, I haven't done that. I've literally worked and burned myself. Just exhaustion. The type of exhaustion, I'll be in the shower and I'll just start crying. Anyone that knows me, I'm not a crier. But it's the tiredness. Like little kids when they refuse to go to sleep and they start crying because they can't settle. They want to sleep, but they're fighting the sleep. That's exactly what it is as an adult. And I made the decision that my mental health will not only always come first, because that goes without saying, but no work will compromise my mental health, because no matter how much money I make, I won't have the energy to spend it. I won't have the energy to enjoy it, because I'll be too busy catching up on sleep that I've lost. I'll be too tired. And the dangerous part is the domino effects that it has on every part of your life, because I was burning myself out. I wasn't leaving the house. I think I was in the house for 3 weeks straight without leaving. That's not normal. Being able to go for walks and actually go for walks, and see daylight is healthy. So I definitely can understand why, some people do want to be in the office. And I think for me, in the future, it would be maybe once every 2 weeks going into the office and things like that, and creating healthy boundaries on a personal level between myself and work. No matter how much I love my job, if I'm unable to deliver it because I'm tired, I've burnt out, I won't be good at my job, because I won't be able to deliver, because I'm not allowing myself the opportunity and the breathing space to do it. And I think we all need to hold ourselves accountable for our own mental health and our sometimes unhealthy relationship with our job and our careers. So now moving on to the end of year wrap up questions. I basically posted on the Toya Talks Podcast Instagram page, which is Toya_Talks, and my personal Instagram page, which is Toya_Washington, and asked you guys to ask me any questions you like. I also did ask the same question on Snapchat, and I have saved all your questions. There's quite a few of them, so let's get through them. The first question, no question. You are getting married, and I am super excited. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, for some of you who don't know, I got engaged during the pandemic, and I'll be getting married. So yeah, that's such a blessing, and equally shows as well that, you know, a pandemic isn't necessarily going to be the blocker in attaining certain things. So that was an amazing blessing, and I'm so blessed. So thank you so much for your good vibes. Next question. Hi Toya, my question is, how do I navigate getting entry-level positions, especially during interviews? That's a really good question, especially because there's a lot of graduates that have graduated this year and graduated into a pandemic, and the job market has been crazy, it's been very volatile. And what I will say is I have masterclasses on the toyatalks.com website. I've got a CV masterclass and I've got an interview masterclass, and it basically caters to anybody at any level of their career, whether you're in the throes of your career, whether you're entry level, whether you're a junior, whatever your position is. I've created masterclasses to be able to guide you through the working world, insofar as your CV, which literally is an invitation into your skill set and what you're able to provide an organization. And more importantly, it's your first encounter of organizations encountering you, and your CV is so important because it's where you create the impression. It's where you have an opportunity for a short window of time for them to decide whether they're going to convert your CV into an invite for interview. So in order to answer that question, I would say the answers are in the masterclasses. Next question. Hi Toya, I wanted to know if you've ever been in private practice as a corporate solicitor. If not, why did you choose not to go into this? So I kind of spoke about this during the podcast episodes, but it is a question I get quite a lot. So for the avoidance of doubt, which is my favorite saying, I'm going to answer it here. So yes, I've worked in private practice before. Those of you who know, obviously know that I am a part qualified lawyer. So I did only half of my training contract before I decided that this wasn't for me. So I have worked in private practice, and before then anyway, as a paralegal and things like that, I've worked in private practice, and there were a few reasons why I chose not to fully qualify. One being there was this one case that literally really changed the way I viewed the justice system in this country, and from a personal level, from an integrity level, I know that I'm so principled in as a person. I definitely realised quite early on that this case that I was working on, the outcome of that case changed the way I looked at the justice system, and how racism is so knitted into the fabric of the society that we choose to live in, and even more so in the justice system, which is not necessarily justice. And you know, some people will be like, well, you can just change it, or you can transform it. No, it is what it is. And I think there's other ways that I can change the way in which Black people navigate. And for me, my area, my subject matter area is the world of work. And I think I'm so grateful to be placed in a situation whereby I was able to go into private practice and then decide that actually it's not for me. And this is why I say to people, you know, just because you study law doesn't mean you have to be a lawyer. I earn way more money doing what I do for a living than if I was a lawyer at the same stage as myself. And I know this because a lot of my friends who we went to law school with, a lot of them who mocked me for kind of walking away from my training contract are really, really unhappy, and actually have asked me how they could get more commercial experience, because a lot of lawyers don't have the commercial experience. And a lot of my friends have asked, Toya, how do I do like commercial contract management? And I think I'm way more happier than a lot of my friends who have confessed to me that, you know, for them it felt like one stage after another, rather than them taking the time out to actually assess whether they were happy becoming a lawyer, staying in that field. And a lot of them haven't diversified, so they've been pigeonholed. And for a long time I was asked, you know, I'd go to interviews, they'll be like, oh, do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a lawyer? I don't get that much more anymore, because I've done what I needed to do to fully show that I'm committed to my career path. And also as well, I think, when people talk about corporate solicitor, a solicitor's a solicitor, whether they're corporate or not. But the reality is, choosing not to kind of fully qualify is a decision that even at this stage of my life, I still feel is the best decision I ever made. Obviously, you guys know I'm writing a book, and I go into a bit more detail as to the reasons why I just didn't want to do law. I go into a lot of detail. And also as well, I think anybody who doesn't allow themselves to look outside the box, the thing is, as you're evolving as a person and as a character, your choices and the things that you like and dislike changes. And there'd be nothing more challenging for me as a person if I qualified as a lawyer and stayed in there and didn't ever consider anything outside of it. The world is my complete oyster. I've worked in the financial sector. I've worked in the tech industry, the IT industry. I've worked for consultancies. I've worked in so many different places. And I know that, I've got some friends who've worked in different law firms. That's been great for them. But there is nothing that they can do that I can't. Like, I can do, if not more than, because I specialise in contracts. So, yeah, I think it's an amazing field to be in as a lawyer, and being a solicitor, I think it's amazing. And I think those people who are committed to that career path do a great job. But, once you know what you're good at, and once you fall in love with what you do for a living, it doesn't matter if it suits you and doesn't suit others. And don't put yourself in a situation where you're working in one field. I'd always say, open your mind. If 2020 has taught you anything, or taught us anything, is that we should have open minds in how we approach our career. Hi, Toya. Thank you for being the guiding light in the world of work. Your podcast is the only podcast I listen to, as I'm not really into them, but yours feels personal because of your Snapchat and stories on there. I've got a question which I'm not sure if it's too broad. However, could you please summarize Teams etiquette? For example, are we obliged to show our faces when the other person's face is on? Is it rude? I just started a new job, and some people show their face and some people don't, and they're always bantering about hidden faces. And during a presentation, do you need to show your face when you're presenting? Thank you so much, and wishing you a happy new year. It's funny that you mention that, actually, because by the time this goes up, I would have done my Clubhouse forum where I'm actually talking about working remotely whilst black. And one of the topics is going to be about kind of Teams and Skype etiquette, basically remote working etiquette. So I did mention this yesterday in yesterday's Clubhouse that I joined. And this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, I think if you're new and you've just started somewhere new, I think you should put your camera on, at least for the first week. Okay? Give yourself a week minimum, but obviously you can keep it on if you want to for a maximum of however you want to. But this is how I would approach it. And what I will say is, when you're presenting, you should put your camera on, I think, because you are the person that is presenting, right? But equally, I need you to balance that with the fact that when you're presenting, people are looking at what you're presenting. They should be looking at your face anyway. Now, for me personally, whilst remote working, when I've been presenting, I switch my camera on. But there has been situations where I haven't, because I found that leaving my camera on was a bit of a distraction, because whilst I'm concentrating on what I'm presenting, I forget that the camera's on and people can see my face. I'm quite an expressive, visually, facially expressive person. So I have to be really, really careful with my camera. So it's not about whether it's being rude or not. I think the way to look at it is, rather than look at it as being rude, I think you should look at it as reading the room and asking yourself then what you feel comfortable with. So if everybody else has their camera on and you have your camera off, that's not being rude. There could be a number of reasons why you don't have your camera on. Oh, I'm not feeling too well today. I'm not a morning person. I don't want to see anyone's face in the morning, because I'm telling you, half of them people that are looking at me in the face haven't had a shower that morning, still got the sleep crustaceans in the corner of their eyes. I don't need to fucking see that. Okay? And I would say that a camera doesn't build relationships, you do. And I think people, especially people in the workplace, they focus on this visual thing, seeing people so they can see their houses or what shelving units they have. It's just a bunch of bullshit. And the fact that there is such a focus from people who have just fucking sad lives, bantering about people's camera off. And really, underneath it all, what they're basically saying is they want you to put your camera on, but they can't give you a justifiable reason as to why. You know, where I'm contracting at the moment, there was a particular meeting that happened. It's a reoccurring meeting, and they actually put in the meeting etiquette, and they said everyone has to switch their cameras on. I didn't switch my camera on. There's nothing contractually obligating me to switch my camera on. Yeah? Nothing. But if there's like a meeting and there's just me and another person, I might be obliged to put that camera on if I feel like I'm comfortable enough to. And I think people also need to think about what you're comfortable with. You know, I was talking about Clubhouse and not really feeling comfortable with speaking on Clubhouse. It's really intimidating looking at someone's face on a camera and speaking into camera. It's not a natural way of doing things, right? That's not how we naturally do work. So what I will say is balance your decision on whether to switch your camera on and off, on whether you feel comfortable reading the room, and asking yourself, what do I gain, or what is gained by switching on the camera? If you think it builds better relationships with your colleagues, then that's obviously a consideration. But if it is just to satisfy people's ego and make other people more uncomfortable at your own detriment, then you don't have to. So let's move on to the next question. Hey Toya, what is your current role? What role are you getting into next? What made the current role the most stressful in your career? And since following you, I haven't seen you complain like this before. That came over Snapchat. So the first question is, what's your current role? So I'm a commercial contract, I'm a lead commercial contract consultant. What role are you going to next? I'm going to a similar role, but there's supply management as well, which I do actually enjoy and didn't think I did. But again, because I've done the procurement diploma, I understand how to, create supply relationships and manage suppliers. And again, even though I had got my qualification, it was only, I think it was like 2018, that I decided that I wanted to do procurement, because I found that everywhere I was going, like different places I was working in, I was always part of a procurement function. And I thought to myself, right, even though I'm negotiating these contracts, at the end of the day, procurement are the people procuring these contracts. They're the ones that are dealing with the suppliers. So it's important for me to understand, how procurement works, how suppliers are selected, how they're managed, to make me a more well-rounded contract manager. And that's what I found with it myself. And I've become more commercial as well. So that's been amazing. So the question, another question she asks is, what made the current role the most stressful in your career? And it's because of the type of project it is. And I work on I do different contracts for different organisations, and some of these contracts are classified. So you will never hear me sit here and tell you, like, if I'm in a current role, where that current role is. I'm never going to do that. That's just not who I am. It's not what I am. And those who know me know that I'm still a very private person, and I found the balance in terms of what I will share and what I will not. I take my career very seriously. You all know this, and therefore I afford it the respect it deserves. It's really difficult to explain how stressful this job is. It's so difficult unless you're in it, and everybody in it agrees because everybody's leaving. It's a revolving door, and there's a big push for like mental health and mental well-being, because we've had grown men on meetings crying, having breakdowns. We've got people working till 2 a.m, 3 a.m. Someone logged in at 5 a.m. It is mad. It is mental. And whilst I'm just so grateful to even be in this organisation doing what I do, I've ticked that box. Do you know what I mean? I've ticked it. I've done it. And it looks absolutely incredible on my CV. I don't necessarily feel like I've got anything to prove. And having a nervous breakdown isn't proof of the fact that I'm working hard. What it shows is the role is just crazy. And yeah, on Snapchat, I share a lot more on there, I think. And, you guys get to see a bit more of my day to day. And yeah, I'm just not the type of person that complains. So when I do, it's a lot, organizations, workplaces, they're difficult, stressful environments anyway, but it's a heightened sense of stress when I can't even go to the toilet and have a shit because I'm constipated, because I'm so stressed about work. That's not normal to me. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. This wrap-up question was sent on the 10th of December, and it reads, "Hi Toya, firstly, I'm sure you get this all the time, but your content is absolutely amazing and actually so practical. It's none of that walk into the office with the air of a boss and people recognise your skill set nonsense that people preach without the actual steps to achieve what you desire. My question is, how do I get myself out of always having to validate my skill set when the results speak for themselves? I've noticed that the older people I work with, I'm a freelance consultant in accounting, always want to nitpick my fee, but I always deliver on objectives and both parties agreed on. It's actually to the point that my work bails these managers or business owners out of their mess, reducing costs, negotiating new terms, the suppliers, or finalising reports because the manager isn't familiar with the new accounting regulations. They now start moving mad and want me to break down and validate my cost. It's utterly frustrating because I feel like they just want to take my methods and act like they've produced it themselves. If you do manage to see this, thank you for taking the time to read through it. It's such a good question. And I tend to find it more, it happens more when you're a freelancer, but it does happen when you are a per member of staff too. It's about setting boundaries. If you deliver, you shouldn't then have to nitpick your costings. And I think you are too nice. And I say this because people who nitpick, especially it's older members of staff who nitpick, they do so to people who they think they can nitpick to and get away with it. At the point in which you're contracted to do a job, you agree the deliverables and you agree the fee up front. And then you go ahead and deliver against the deliverables that you agreed to. End of story. I think that you need to, especially as a freelance, we need to enjoy the benefits of the flexibility that freelancing provides us. And it provides us the ultimate leverage of being the subject matter expert in what we do, hence why they're contracting our services. And for me, it's about, okay, maybe it's better if I give this example. I've worked in an organisation before where I've delivered against the deliverables and it's been maybe a week before I leave. And rather than just kind of saying to me, hey, Toya, we want to extend you, they try to renegotiate my fee by questioning what I'd done to arrive at that cost. And my response is always, I've delivered against my deliverables. My costs are non-negotiable and they are what they are. Simple. And do you know who I learned that from? I learned that from white people, I did. I learned it from white people because as black people, we're not really raised to discuss money. It's still very much a taboo. I guess not as much as it was back then. I mean, now I think we're all kind of getting more familiar with talking about money and speaking about money in its frankness. But there are still situations, especially in the world of work, when you've already agreed the fee. Why are we still talking about it? And I always believe that people in the audience speak when you give them license. And you have to basically put your foot down and be very clear and be very forthright in your position. Older people question your fee because it's a fee that they have not been able to attain and charge a business. So if they break you down and break your fee down, it makes them feel more better about the role that they do and what they do. And ultimately, as a freelancer, you're only accountable to yourself. I am employed by my business. My business employs me. Therefore, I am the CEO and director of my business. I'm accountable to myself. I'm not accountable to people who are not on my payroll. And that is the mindset that you have to have. If you get into the trap and you fall into the trap of having to explain yourself, the explanations you give and the answers you provide are never going to be good enough for the people who are questioning it, looking to find holes in your answer. And this is why I say to you, it's about setting boundaries. Freelancers set boundaries too. There has to be a point where you've discussed money, sign on the dotted line, and it's the end of conversation. Now, if you wasn't delivering against your deliverables, that's different. But even then, you've already agreed the fee up front. So why are we still talking about it? And I think you need to be that forthright. I understand that maybe, you have a few questions about my fees, but I've delivered against my deliverables. And in fact, I've offered some business improvements to better streamline your business. And actually, I'm not in a position to talk about my fee because I actually think in actuality, what I've delivered is less than what I should have charged you in the first place. That's how you answer it. People say, you mentioned here, some people advise, an air of a boss, but not give you the practical skills. that is the practical skills I'm giving you. But the air of the boss that you need to adopt is how you view yourself as a freelancer in your business. Because, you know, one thing that I feel like I've picked up, especially being Nigerian and from the Nigerian culture, we as Nigerians are very, you know, I don't know, like, you know, we're very see me, showy. Not all of us, some of us. But what I love about Nigerians is the confidence that we sometimes exude. And in an office, in a workplace whereby as Black people, we're considered the minority, you have to exude a level of confidence and maintain that confidence, because if they see a crack, they will try to break you down. And I think when you attack someone's fee, effectively, you're attacking what they do. Because if I tell you what my fee is, that's what my fee is. Now, if we're negotiating, that's different. But when you are using my fee to then question what I've delivered or question the authenticity of what I bring to the table, it's actually quite insulting. And I think that once you change your mindset and are a bit more forthright, and that forthrightness allows you to set boundaries, you're less likely to get these stupid questions. So I hope that helps. Question that came through on Instagram on the 2nd of December, and it reads, what was the moment your career kicked off for you? Wow. What was the moment my career... I think my career kicked off for me when I started to deal with my career like it was a project. And I started to invest in my career. And that investment came from, you know, becoming the subject matter expert by sacrificing the time to do further study, to add to my skill set. Because some of that adding to my skill set wasn't just from the study. It came from like short courses. So, because when I think about study, I think about like courses for a year, but I did some short courses, like 2 months, 3 months. And I think at the point in which I invested that time, I noticed that my career kicked off for me, because it became clearer the direction I wanted to go in, because I was walking in the light of what my career was for me. And I was opening up my mind to the possibility of my earning potential and also position potential. And you know, once you do kind of make those sacrifices, it's so that you could be in a better position in your career. And I was noticing that those sacrifices were paying dividends, because I was starting to get those interviews in roles that I would have never been able to be considered for had I not kind of made the initial sacrifices. And when my mindset changed to looking at my career as a project, I would say my career kicked off for me. I would also say like a poignant job role that I had was, I would say, working in tech. And there's not a lot of women in tech, but the women that are in tech are absolutely phenomenal, the ones I've worked with. And I think working in tech made me realise that this is where the world is going. And to get ahead of the curve, it's about being able to predict where your industry will be in a few years' time, and kind of reading around your subject area. And that job really did start to propel me. It really tested my endurance. It tested my patience, and it forced me into different situations within my career, which actually has been the springboard for the jobs that have come since. So yeah, hopefully you are happy with that answer, because that's all I got. Another question from Instagram. What's the top 3 tips for getting a promotion at work? Top 3 tips for getting a promotion at work is to make sure you have a feedback folder. And I discussed feedback folder in previous episodes. So if you don't know what that is, please get acquainted with the previous episodes. I would say, so feedback folder would be one of the top 3 tips for getting a promotion at work. The second one will be managing and getting acquainted with your end of year reviews and really driving those, not allowing your manager to drive it, but you two, and putting some realistic objectives. And those objectives should attain something that would bring you closer to a promotion. And I think not being afraid to have those discussions. What does a promotion look like in this organization? And asking your boss and put them on the spot, what do I need to do to attain that? And then formalizing it in a review that is looked at every quarter or every year. I would say that's number 2. And I'd say number 3 is promotions don't just happen in the organizations you work in. And to get your head out of that mindset of thinking a promotion only has weight, or a promotion is only achievable where you are working. Sometimes, and I found in my own career, the promotions that have really
made a difference in my career hasn't always happened in the organisations that I was currently in. It was from organisations externally, whereby I'd attained all the experience, I've become the subject matter expert, I'd done what I needed to do. But sometimes you can work in organisations that have a flat structure or have a really, really, the ceiling is quite low, so it has a really low ceiling. And actually, reconciling myself at the fact that if I am to get a promotion, it will, number one, be driven by me, but it won't be in this organisation. And then thinking about what a promotion looks like and then going out there externally and looking for it. And it comes from making sure that your CV is up to date. So I've got the CV masterclass on toyatalks.com. I talk about that a lot, and reviewing my CV quarterly. So I would say those are the three things in regards to getting a promotion at work. And, the latter one where I said changing your mindset. If you think that a promotion can only be achieved at work, where you're currently working, and you don't achieve that promotion, you become very disillusioned very quickly. So open your mind at the possibility that a promotion can happen where you're currently working, or you being a bit more proactive and looking externally to other organisations, maybe even in the same field, but where you can get a more senior role or a role that would be a promotion from where you are now. So, Would you ever consider becoming friends with any of your true supporters? And that came through on Instagram on the 3rd of December. I would never say no in its absolute, but what I will say is I've had to really learn the hard way over the last 2 years about keeping my circle very tight and about protecting my energy and protecting my spirit. And in doing that, it has meant that I've really had to dig deep about what friendship means to me and constantly evaluate myself as a friend. And what I will say is, I always used to have this, and it was a bad attitude where I would say no new friends. And what I realized is it was a bad attitude to have because people come into your life for different reasons. And that for me, I know how much I value my friendships, and I have made some amazing, amazing friends over the last few years. 2 of which started off as, supporters of the platform and became friends. And I would say that I'm quite a guarded person when it comes to friendships, and I move off vibes and energy. And if your energy is right and my spirit is aligned with your energy, building a friendship is easier. But I think where I'm at in my life right now, I definitely feel as though I'm not as open to making new friends. But if God ordains somebody to be a friend in my life, like a really true friend, and me to them, it will just happen quite organically. So I'm not completely close to it. But what I'm saying is, I think in protecting my energy, I'm just a lot more cautious about the friends I do make, especially ones who are newer friends. But I will say that I'm very blessed to have a great set of friends, a support system that makes sense. And like I said, 2 of which, were supporters of the Toya Talks platform and became really, like, one of them is like a really, really tight friend of mine. And, even knowing that and, reflecting on that friendship journey, it has been amazing. And I'm so grateful to God that anybody would want to be my friend, because friendship not by force. So. Good morning, Toya. I just wanted to say thank you for your podcasts. I listen to them on Tuesday and Sunday if I'm not able to listen to it. As a mature woman, your podcast relates to every black woman, regardless of their age, as we should be learning every day, and I'm learning so much from you. You are truly amazing, a phenomenal woman. I have been telling a few black women about your podcasts, as I know they will really appreciate your work experiences in the workplace. Sorry, I was not meant to say a lot, but thanks again, my sister. Thank you so much. And I talk about all the time how you guys have really propelled the podcast, and I really mean it, because a lot of people who are maybe new to the platform or new to the podcast know about me because of a recommendation. And I will always say that the best form of marketing is word of mouth. The best form. I've watched my numbers quadruple over the last 12 months, hitting numbers, to be honest, like you wouldn't expect in your first year, especially when I've been reading. I read a lot of articles and on podcasts, and what people say is, the average of what people, downloads, considered good downloads in the first year, I was getting 3 times that, if not more. And, I'm almost at 40,000 downloads if I'm not there already. And to think that
this podcast, when it started on the 1st of January 2020, I really agonized for a while about putting a podcast out. And people that have followed me or follow the Snapchat page know that even though I share a lot, I'm equally as private. And finding that balance, for me, I was worried, I was scared. I was scared of kind of being propelled into a light that I wasn't ready to receive. But then when you trust that you're walking in your purpose, I really do believe that spiritually, you're then armed with the tools to kind of deal with what comes with that. And what has come from sharing has been the ability to touch and change the lives of Black women as they navigate work. The workplace is and can be such a volatile environment that if I'm able to add comfort around work, if I'm able to share my experiences, good, bad and ugly, and you're able to laugh, cry, consider, ponder, and actually use those learnings to kind of change the way you work and navigate so that you can attain success, then it's well worth it to me. So thank you so much, and thank you for reaching out and spreading such warmth. That is so beautiful, and I'm so grateful. Hi Toya, hope you had a lovely day. I just had a question about one-to-one meetings with managers. How open should you be about your development and things you're interested in? In one of your podcast episodes, you mentioned that no one should know your next move till you make it. I'm worried if I'm too open, I'll give too much away. I'd really appreciate your advice. Thank you. So firstly, there's a couple of things here, but I want to address the main thing that she said here. She said, in a previous episode, I said that you shouldn't tell people your next move until you make it. You do realise that when I talk about that and I say that, I mean about people who are not intrinsic to that next move. So it's about finding a balance. So for me, energies and spirituality is really important. So my next moves, nobody hears about it really, apart from maybe a close, circle of friends that, and they will know because maybe I've asked them their opinion about certain things. I've sought advice from them. But ultimately, I'm telling people who I know for a fact are like my loudest cheerleaders as I am theirs. Now, when it comes to your managers in the workplace, you have to strike the balance. If your manager is intrinsic to your next move, then you need to find a way in kind of having that communication with them so that they facilitate that next move for you. But you are the one that is proactive in moving to that next stage. So for instance, earlier on I talk about, end of year reviews or quarterly reviews. That's the opportunity where you should be telling your manager what your plans are for that role, if only to sound them out and see if you're on the same page. Because if you don't share that information, how are they supposed to know what they need to do to be able to facilitate that next move if they're imperative for that next stage? So it's about striking a balance between sharing and need to know basis and actually being private enough to move in silence. You need to find the balance. And I will continue to reiterate the fact that every single move that I've made in my career, understand that I have done my due diligence before I even open my mouth. Because just because I have a plan for where I want to be in an organisation, you could meet a manager that actually doesn't want you to go to any next level and actually feels comfortable with you remaining at that spot, in that role. But you need to be able to decipher that quite early. Is this person going to be an ally for my next move or a hindrance? And that will then fuel your next decision about whether to share that with your boss. But I would like to think that if you're doing end of year reviews, quarterly reviews, or any type of reviews in your workplace, for example, you should be sharing what your objectives are and aligning those objectives with your bosses. Now, I have an episode in season 1 of the Toya Talks podcast where I say your manager is not the key to your success, because they should never be the key. You should be the key. They should be a facilitator or an instrument that you use, but your career progression should never rest on your manager. But if you're talking about seniority and influence, they have influence. They must have some form of influence. It's about whether that influence works for you or against you. And then that should then feed into your decision of how much to share with your boss and not. Don't then confuse that with sharing things externally with people. You got to remember, when you empower people with knowledge, it's that knowledge they'll use to either beat you with a stick or to celebrate you. And, you know, I have an episode in season 2 about discernment and how we discern and decide who those people are and what role they play in our lives. Ultimately, you are the architect of your own career. You are the person whose career is affected by the decisions you make. So then you need to equally be as careful about who you share those decisions with and who you share your plans with. But I'm not saying, you know, no means am I saying be secretive and keep it to yourself. Just know what you're keeping to yourself and what you're sharing. And finding the balance is equally as important.
Question that came through on my Snapchat on the 8th of December. Sis. So basically, I lost my job during the pandemic and my friend asked me to give her my CV so that she could put it forward to her workplace for an admin role. I found the same role online being advertised and I applied for it as well. She comes back the following day and told me she had interviewed for the job role she requested my CV for. Honestly, I was shocked, and her excuse was that the team decided to hire internally, which I don't believe. I told her what's mine would always be mine and said nothing else, but I feel like I should have a conversation with her about it because something isn't adding up. I do understand that working in the same place as your friend isn't recommended and she doesn't owe me anything, but I think she should have approached the situation differently. I feel betrayed and hurt, not because I didn't get the job, but by her actions and approach.
Am I overreacting?
Well, firstly, no, you're not overreacting. But, you know, I always say when someone shows you who they are, you need to believe them.
You know, my whole issue with that situation is, even if she wanted to apply for the job, she shouldn't have told you that the job existed, knowing that she was going to go for that job. Or maybe she didn't realise until she submitted your CV that she wanted to go for the job as well. But she should have just been honest with you. Honesty is free. Honesty is free. And I don't understand why people are committed to just bullshit. Just committed to their bullshit. And I say this because, you know, there's something that Kelechi Okafor from the podcast Say Your Mind says, and I completely agree. I'm a dickhead in recovery. But I've never been the type of dickhead that steps on another person to get to where I want to get to, or steps on another person to elevate me to the next level. I've just never been that person. Like, integrity is one of those things that cannot be sold on the open market. You either are born with integrity or you're not. And this whole thing about working with your friend, let me just set the context here first. I've worked with my best friend twice. We're in the same field. Different trajectories in the same field. And there has been numerous times I've worked with my friend on projects, on contracts, but two main times that I recall whereby she has put me forward for something. And she's done that because she knows that, number one, I'm not a threat to her because she's comfortable in herself. Number two, my friend knows I'm great at my job, but it doesn't undermine how great she is at her job. And actually, when you are friends with people who do not see you as competition, it makes for the most healthiest relationships because honesty isn't too far behind. I think that the way your friend was moved is like an op. Sorry, you're moving like a fucking op. And you're right to feel as though her behaviour is unacceptable because her lack of commitment to honesty is what's making her behaviour even more suspect. And I put it to you that she probably didn't even put your CV forward, babes. That has to be a possibility for you to consider. Because my thing is, if she put your CV forward, why didn't you have an interview? Because I didn't get from you that you had an interview. But maybe they just didn't shortlist you. I don't know. But the reality of it is I don't see how you can move forward trusting this person wholeheartedly. It doesn't mean you can't be friends with that person because a bad decision doesn't make you a bad person. Okay? But when someone shows you who they are or gives you a glimpse of who they are, you need to believe what they tell you. So clearly, she thinks that a role that she had told you about was actually a role that she wanted. But in not being honest with you about that, what she showed you is, I don't mind stepping on you, friend.
to get to where I need to, friend. And I'm still going to act like I've done nothing wrong, friend. And I know that you're going to put up with it, friend. Now, the part about confronting her, I kind of feel like it's up to you. But I will always say, what outcome are you looking for? Because if it's an apology, babes, I don't think you'll get that, because if she was going to apologize, she would have been honest with you in the beginning, and the apology would have followed swiftly after. I feel like it will be a confrontation, because she will be defensive, because you're calling her out on her bullshit that she refuses to own by herself or on her own. So I think that maybe you need to take this as a learning lesson about the type of person she is from a career perspective and a career setting. But don't ever think you can't work with your friend. If you set clear enough boundaries, you should be able to work with your friend. There are some people that, from a personality perspective, you can't work with. Like, I know at work my personality is slightly different. Like, I'm very black and white. I can have the kikis and the ha-has, but for the most part, I'm very serious about the deliverables of my work. And I do not allow friendship to convolute that. And in working with my best friend, what I love is that we are independent of each other, and we are the type of professionals whereby we take pride in our jobs. So we couldn't take our best friendship into the office. We had to take our colleague selves into the office, and outside of the office we could be friends. And it worked. It doesn't work for everybody, but I think now you need to, if you haven't already, be in the forefront of your career, look for those jobs. And I know it's difficult in a pandemic, but you now know where you stand with this person. It's about adapting your friendship to accommodate for this new information or new discovery about this person. It doesn't make her a bad person, but maybe it just highlights the fact that you can't necessarily trust her job-wise, especially knowing that you've been made redundant. And that's the bit where we're looking for some empathy here, where you've been made redundant, she's already in a job. It wouldn't have taken anything away from her to kind of facilitate you getting that job. And both of you have jobs, right? But some people are all about themselves, and some people are dickheads and don't even realize it, babe. But this is a learning lesson. It's also a life lesson. You pat dust your shoulders off, stand up, and keep going. So another wrap-up question that came through on the 13th of December. Hi, Toya. Do you have a favorite episode? Oh my God. That's such a good question. Actually, my partner asked me a similar question the other day. So I love every episode because I pour my heart and soul into every episode. And every episode has its own unique learning lesson. It has its own unique story. And it has its own unique gems, if you like. And I would say that I don't have a favorite, but what I have is 3 episodes that really forced me to really deep dive into my career history. And one of them is Briefcase Bandicoot. That episode was amazing, and it really caused me to really have a deep dive into my career journey, to where I started and where I am now. Another one would be You Can't Put Black Women in the Corner, because we know where they put us, and they don't often put us at the corner. They just put us at the bottom of anything that's at the bottom. And my thing is, as black women, we are absolutely phenomenal. We are such unique beings, and we are so underestimated, and that is our leverage. As soon as you know what your leverage is, it's like knowing what your superpower is. And I think that was like the 2nd or 3rd episode of the podcast from season 1. And, the reaction that I got from everyone was absolutely amazing. But when I kind of was, delivering that episode, I never deliver an episode and think, I never sit there and think, right, this is going to be the episode. Like, I just deliver it the most authentic way, I know how. I'd say another episode would, oh God, the fact that it's only 3 is not nice. There's so many more, but I would say dyslexia.
I am a successful Black professional with a learning disability. And it was probably one of a couple of my most vulnerable episodes where, I'm talking about my learning disability, a learning disability that I've always been told that would hinder me from attaining success, or has made me feel as though success, wasn't attainable to me because I had a learning difficulty, and kind of being able to work through that. I mean, I spoke about, I didn't even know I had dyslexia until I was in my 20s. And, in earlier episodes, I shared the story about not being able to spell the word birthday and being utterly humiliated in primary school and wetting myself. Like, even discussing it on the podcast was a lot for me because I hadn't had to talk about it for years. And being an example to people who have learning disabilities, that you can attain success if you want to. And it's about learning how you learn and playing to your strengths. And I'm so happy that my dad was quite strict in that he never wanted me to use it as a crux, because he knew that society wouldn't be fair. He knew the workplace wouldn't be fair. So if I use that as a crux, many would use it as a rod to beat me with. But instead, I go into these organizations, no one has a clue that I'm dyslexic. It's none of their business. And to be honest, knowing that I've achieved so much, I realized being dyslexic is probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I've really taken the time to understand how I learn. I really love learning the way I know how. And equally, I know how many people who have dyslexia who have really been comforted and supported by the podcast episode, and have used it as a launch pad to kind of motivate them and spring them into action. I'm not going to sit here and lie, learning is still a challenge. Learning is still a challenge independently, but when I adapt it to how I learn, it makes learning easier. And I just thank God for the ability to be able to sit here and say, I'm a successful Black woman and I'm dyslexic. And sometimes I have a short attention span. However, I found a career that makes sense for me, and I know how I learn now, and it works. So yeah, those will be the three.
So another question that came through on the 13th of December, when you set goals, how do you go about tackling them? I'm struggling at the moment. Well, I think I've kind of mentioned it earlier on in the episode about my vision board and holding myself accountable for every goal that I have under each heading. So I have different headings. So you might have life, you might have personal life, and things within those different cards are headings. And underneath them would be the goals underneath those headings, and I'll do like little square boxes, and once they've been achieved I tick them. And part of tracking is reviewing some of my goals every quarter. Obviously in season 2 of the Toya Talks podcast I talk about manifestation, and I also talk about my vision boards and things like that, so hopefully you'll find that episode quite useful in relation to this question. What are the 3 pieces of advice that you would give your younger self about life and work? Ooh, that's a good question. 3 pieces of advice I'd give to my younger self about life and work. You are worthy. You are worthy of every blessing that comes your way. You are deserving of everything that you've worked hard for. And don't allow self-doubt to cripple your ability to celebrate your achievements. I would say trust in yourself, trust in your choices. Don't be in a rush. Life will come at you fast, but if you take your time and trust in yourself, you will benefit from the blessings that God has prepared for you. And I think the third thing I would say is there's no need to cry. Because I definitely believe in my 20s I cried a lot. It was quite tearful. I remember a lot of tears being shed. And I would say, Toya, there's no need to cry. It's going to be okay. So those are 3 pieces of advice I would give to my younger self. Hi, Toya. I hope you're well. I've been wanting to ask you this question ever since I listened to your Split Personality podcast episode. You spoke of being bullied when you were in secondary school. Have you ever spoken to that girl since then? Like, has she ever reached out to you during your older adulthood? Thanks. And the answer is yes.
So those who know like my career journey as an African entertainment TV presenter, I actually hosted the Afro Hair and Beauty Awards in 2014. I was the first person to host the main stage by myself, and it went down amazingly. It was an amazing show. It was probably one of the best ones I've ever hosted. And I didn't realize that in the audience, there was a lot of people that, I knew. Obviously, because I grew up in North London, and it was held in North London. I think the business park in Islington in London. And after I finished the show, then I think the same day actually, I received quite a lot of like DMs through Instagram. And at that time, I was still quite new to Instagram. And the girl that had bullied me, that I spoke about on the Split Personality episode of the Toya Talks podcast, she reached out to me and asked me if I remembered who she was, and I responded. I said, yeah, of course I do. And she said, I've turned my life around. I've given my life to Christ. And I said to her, is that your way of apologizing for bullying me and making my secondary school, part of my secondary school's life, a living hell? Telling me you've changed is not a substitute for an apology. And if you found God, then part of finding God is also being honest with yourself. And she said to me, I've got kids now, And I was like, well, I'm really happy for you and everything, but I don't understand like why you're messaging me. And literally, that was the last time I ever heard from her. And I wasn't even angry or aggressive, but my thing is, if you have found God and therefore you feel that absolves you of any responsibility of certain decisions and actions you did when you were younger, the reality is you've reached out to me because clearly you still have a guilty conscience, or at least you want me to acknowledge you. The apology should follow after. And I wasn't going to let her off scot-free without calling out that bullshit. But equally, I recognised that I was actually quite shocked of her boldness. And I also realised that, I still had to parent myself at that age. Like, when she, reached out to me, I didn't realise I had to parent myself, because when I was bullied, it was really, really bad, and I never really dealt with it. But I have dealt with it, and I've spoken through it and everything, and kind of dealt with kind of what I went through when I was bullied, because a lot of stuff I went through I never really spoke about. And what I will say is that the woman I am now, I just can't be bullied. It's not possible. And I think that's why whenever I see someone being bullied in the workplace, I can't handle it. I can't stand it. And, for me, I've grown up understanding that bullies only bully people that they think they can get away with it. And with me, you can't get away with it. Like, Toya at secondary school is very different from Toya the adult. So yeah, it's more about kind of what I learned from that situation, and making sure that when I have my children, I look at the telltale signs if they are ever bullied, God forbid, because I don't know if I'd cope with that very well, knowing that I had my own bad experiences with bullying. But yeah, I hopefully that answers that question. I'm going to draw that to an end. I know that there's a few people that emailed me some of their wrap-up questions, and what I'm going to do is in the new year, I'll read out some of those questions, and I'm going to leave the dilemmas until the new year, just because they're actually quite long now that I've had a look at them. This is the end of year wrap-up show, and by the time you guys listen to this podcast will be 1 year old, and I have learned so much. You guys have taught me so much. You guys have allowed me to express my creativity through my podcast by sharing my experiences and enabling me to create a safe space to do that. I know there's a lot of people who continuously learn and grow from the Toya Talks podcast, but I'm really, really emphasizing that if you know of anybody that you feel that can benefit from the Toya Talks podcast, please recommend it to them. The world of work is like treacherous waters, and even more so quite a stressful environment that now we're in a pandemic, and having to navigate the world of work remotely has its own nuances. And whilst I continue to guide, teach and educate Black women how to navigate the world of work, in order for us to light up the path of our success, it's more than just the lessons and the things that you learn from here. It's being able to share the platform with other people so they too can learn. You guys have taught me the importance of sharing and being vulnerable. And if my podcast helps, and I say this all the time, one person, I would be satisfied. But I know that it helps so many more women. And I'm so grateful. Thank you guys for reaching out to me, sharing with me, encouraging me and supporting me through the podcast journey. I am a whole podcaster because of the Toya Talks podcast, I'm able to sit here and say to you guys that I did my speaking events during Black History Month, and being able to share the platform with people who had never heard of the Toya Talks platform was amazing. And that happened because of you guys. You guys enabled the podcast to chart top 50 in the Spotify podcast list, and I'm so grateful. When I think of all the things that I achieved in 2020, from the launching of the toyatalks.com website to the apparel line, the affirmation collection, from the masterclasses, the speaking events, the list is endless of achievements that I have been able to achieve through your support of the Toya Talks platform. As we move into 2021, I'm putting my vision board together, so hopefully I'll be able to manifest the things that I have on my vision board, and you guys will begin to, or start to, or continue to manifest the greatness in your own careers. I'm really grateful to have this platform. I'm so excited for 2021. I've got so much content for you guys. I've been scoping it out. I'm sharing my experiences, especially navigating the world of work remotely has been interesting, to say the least. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to draw it to a close. Next year, we are going to talk about relationships, navigating the world of work and career, what having it all really means, some of the sacrifices as Black women we have to make as part of our career. I'm going to be discussing my apprehensions and fears of motherhood in relation to my career. I'm going to be talking about so many things, and trust and believe you're going to learn from the content. For those of you who want to access the masterclasses, as you know, I've got the CV masterclass, interview masterclass, a negotiation masterclass, and the mother and daughter masterclass, which is available exclusively on toyatalks.com. We'll also see very, very, very shortly, and you guys have been so patient, that there will also be a redundancy masterclass, and further details will be released on my Instagram pages, and of course on Snapchat and all my social media handles as well. And I can't wait for that to drop. It's been a labor of love, but it is worth it, and I know a lot of you are going to really benefit from the redundancy masterclass. Thank you so much for all that you have done to make the Toya Talks platform possible. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for reaching out to me. But more importantly, thank you for listening. As this is a bonus episode, there will not be a Toya Talks podcast episode on the 5th of January. The next episode, and the first one of 2021, will be on the 12th, Tuesday, the 12th of January 2021. So I'm going to take a week break. I think I've earned it. And more importantly, I think it's nice to kind of take a step back before coming into the new year and giving you guys the great content that you're used to. If you wish to follow me on social media, my personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks Instagram page is Toya_Talks. My Snapchat is Toya Washington, all one word. My Twitter handle is Toya_W. My Clubhouse handle is Toya Washington, all one word. So yeah, reach out to me if you want to send me a work-related dilemma. The email address is hello@toyatalks.com. And if you want to keep abreast of the up-and-coming news about Toya Talks and the Toya Talks platform and podcast, please visit www.toyatalks.com. This is the last episode of 2020, and I'll see you all in 2021. My name is, of course, Toya Washington, often imitated, but never duplicated. And you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.